Hello, awesome people. I hope you're having a great day today. Today we're taking a look at the 7-page short story in this collection, Lean Times in Lankhmar by Fritz Leiber. It's called In the Witch's Hut. For you folks, it's pretty short. It's another it's another connective short story that connects two major short stories. In this case, the 96-page novella that I previously read, Adept's Gambit, and the next novella in the next section of this book called Stardock, which might be probably is going to be about another 2 or 3 day read because it's pretty long too. So it's connective tissue, and like the other connective tissues in this series that I've read so far for you folks and then did reviews for you, it takes the characters Gray Mouser and Fafhrd from where they finished at the end of this first place and then finishes them off at the next place. Unlike the previous ones where I was giving 6s to, this actually has a plot, an ending, and a beginning, and a middle, and an end. So I liked it. I thought it was much better than sort of the connective tissues that were these sort of fast reads. Last night I got back from a banquet late, for Residence Life, so I wasn't able to really dedicate a long read like I would normally. But luckily, the next short story was only 7 pages long. It took like 15 minutes for me to knock out for you folks. So let's go ahead and start my review of this short story. Now, as a reminder, I keep my reviews spoiler free, so I won't be doing a deep dive into the 7-page short story, but it didn't take that long for me to go ahead and reread it for the second time for you folks. Anyway, so we're going to open up with our characters who have come back from Earth, where they were in Adept's Gambit in Tyre, into Mediterranean. But anyway, so they've now returned, and they're trying to figure out what to do on their next journey before setting out for their journey to find out what they need to do. So they're visiting a witch for you folks. So they're in a witch's tent where they are having a witch, and the witch has just started her magic in order to figure out what's going on with folks. So that's where they are at. And so that is the setup, and then they will finish off with what the witch is going to tell them. So I think it's probably more like a 7. I gave the previous connective ones 6s. I typically give the better ones in here 8s or 8 pluses or something like that. But this probably feels more like a 7. It's definitely got a beginning, middle, end. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't like this really gripping sort of a thing where I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Right, and then while it does have an ending, it's not like this shocking ending or this trick ending or this ending that you didn't see coming, right? It's just an ending. I liked it, but it just wasn't like this massively massive thing for you folks. Anyway, so there's my review of spoiler-free review of the short story. Now, anyway, so let's take a deeper dive into what's going on here. So this is the first short story published in this collection was in 1939 called Two-Sided Adventure, which is republished in this collection series as The Jewels in the Forest, which I've already reviewed for you. In fact, the first Fritz Leiber story I ever reviewed for you a few years ago was Two-Sided Adventure. Then he published a lot of novellas and short stories during his career in this series. He died in 1992, and he published actually in every decade, from the 30s to the 90s for you folks. And that's a key passion of this channel. If you recall, the name of this channel, The Worst Thing About New Books, is a quote by a French philosopher, Jacques Joubert, who said that the worst thing about them was keeping us from reading new books. I'm sorry, the worst thing about new books is that they kept us reading the old books, rather. Sorry. So that is the passion of this. And so since all that was decades ago, and this guy's a big name in the 3 fields that he writes: horror, science fiction, and fantasy. For example, he's won Hugo's in this series. He's won Hugo's in some of the science fiction story. He has a science fiction short story in the Hall of Fame that I've already reviewed for you folks. He also has he's also written in the horror genre. He's gotten Stoker Awards in the horror genre. He was a protege of H.P. Lovecraft, who created the Cthulhu mythos, and so he wrote in the Cthulhu mythos too. His first short story was published and was Two-Sided Adventure in the series that I mentioned earlier, and he died he published it a couple years after H.P. Lovecraft died, so he never had a chance to actually see Fritz Leiber's story get published, which I'm sure is pretty sad. But Fritz Leiber has always owed a debt of loyalty to H.P. Lovecraft, who's also survived. Also, a key thing about Fritz Leiber is that he actually survived. He was publishing in the pulp era, and a lot of pulp era writers just weren't able to survive. Hacking out this huge number of short stories in order to be making the money, right? And so forth. And he survived it, and was continuing and just moved to novels and other genres, right, and so forth. So he was a key thing about that part, I think. He was a poor writer. He didn't even have a study in his room. He wasn't able to afford an apartment with a study. He was just writing in the kitchen table. Another couple of sci-fi writers would visit him and say, "Hey, this guy's so awarded and such a beloved figure. Why is he writing from such poverty?" So he was really a poor writer who just did it for a passion, not because it moved him to a wealthy section. So kind of like his master, H.P. Lovecraft, who just wrote out of poverty, who just wrote out of the love of the field. So anyway, this series in particular is very influential on modern fantasy. So, for example, our two key main characters, the Gray Mouser and Fafhrd, are both thieves, and they both work in a world called Nawan and in a city called Lankhmar, which is a seedy giant city with places like Horror Street and the Plaza of Dark Lights and so forth. And it's a seedy giant city that dominates the plane. So if you have, and with a Thieves Guild, so if you have a modern fantasy work like a role-playing game or a video game or a novel or a comic or a short story where you have thieves that are doing thieves things with Thieves Guilds in a giant city, that comes from Fritz Leiber. So that he owes a big debt for modern fantasy. He's hugely influential on it. Anyway, also another key thing, he helped to influence, like I was mentioning in role-playing games earlier, the first role-playing game ever published, Dungeons and Dragons. In 1979, in an Appendix M, Gary Gygax, the co-creator of the game, he said that he listed this as one of the key influences on the game and where he came up with his ideas. Right, so you can't play a thieves class in any game, right, without playing Fritz Leiber's as thieves, right? So there you are. I'll go ahead and leave you to it. Have you read this short story? If so, what did you think about it? Let's talk about it in the comments below. If you disagreed or thought my 7 was out of 10 was too high or too low, let's talk about it. If you enjoyed this, why not hit that subscribe button? There's going to be a lot more of these to follow. And then finally, I just want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and investing it in watching my video. We all have so many things that are happening in our lives, after all. And we have so many things that pull us in all of these different directions. So the fact that you spent this time with me is incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it. So thanks again, and have an amazing day.